Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're plunging into some truly extraordinary material you've shared with us about Antarctica.
Hmm.
What we commonly envision as just this desolate, frozen continent. Well, it starts to tell a very different story through these
It
sources.
really does.
A story of hidden histories,
Hmm.
maybe secret civilizations, and perhaps an ongoing, untold conflict.
Yeah, unpacking this material, it's immediately clear how these theories radically challenge our, let's say, conventional understanding of history and geography.
Right,
They really do pull back a curtain on a narrative that's far more complex, maybe, than the one we're typically taught.
precisely. So our mission today is to extract the core insights from the material you've provided.
Hmm.
We want to connect these surprising facts and explore the unconventional theories
Hmm.
about a continent that truly seems shrouded in mystery and, conspiracy.
And just to be clear for everyone
Yeah,
listening, we're laying out the knowledge contained in these sources, really trying to understand the arguments presented within them. We're not, endorsing any particular view ourselves.
absolutely. It's about exploring what you've shared with us. Okay, so this is where the narrative takes a truly surprising turn, right?
Hmm.
Our sources paint this picture of Antarctica that's remarkably different from what we commonly imagine. I mean, consider this. Antarctica is roughly the size of Europe. That alone is pretty staggering.
It's huge. Yeah.
But even more astonishing is the theory, explored pretty deeply in your material, that it was once ice-free.
That's the core idea that changes everything, isn't it?
Totally. The Puri race map, for example,
Uh-huh.
dates back to the 1500s.
Right. 1513, I believe.
And it reportedly shows a historical mapping of Antarctica as like a lush, deciduous continent,
Mhm.
completely without ice.
And the sources trace this mapping back even further, don't they, to like ancient Phoenician maps?
Exactly. From a people renowned for their seafaring, it makes you wonder what ancient knowledge might have existed.
Well, connecting those threads, the idea of a historically ice-free Antarctica, it profoundly reshapes our understanding of its past. It's not just suggesting potential for ancient habitation.
Yeah.
It forces us to question our historical timelines, maybe opens the door to possibilities of, forgotten civilizations.
Which leads directly to another fascinating concept from the sources.
The Hollow Earth theory.
Yeah, Hollow Earth theory. It
Mm.
posits that there are these opening entrances at the poles leading right into the Earth's interior.
And intriguingly, this inner Earth is believed by some within these narratives to be the origin, the actual habitation of the Aryan race.
Which ties directly into the Aryan Nordics that Admiral Byrd reportedly described in his diary later on. We'll get to him, I'm sure.
Oh, definitely. It's all interconnected in these accounts.
So if this ancient hidden history is part of the backdrop,
Mhm.
what does it mean for, say, World War II? One of the most pivotal moments in modern history.
Right. How does that fit in?
We're all familiar with the official account, right?
Yeah.
Hitler's suicide, end of the war in Europe.
Standard history lesson. Yep. Bunker, cyanide, gunshot.
Yet your sources present a starkly contrasting narrative. They highlight testimonies, allegedly, from various presidents, high-ranking world leaders, including even Eisenhower.
Suggesting otherwise. Suggesting he didn't die then.
Exactly. The story outline is that Hitler and his chief advisors actually evaded the final days. They boarded U-boats, submarines, and fled. First to Argentina, apparently.
Okay, Argentina comes up a lot in post-war Nazi escape theories.
It does. And from there, they purportedly established a secret base for advanced saucer-shaped aircraft deep inside the Earth,
Inside the Earth.
specifically in a hole at the South Pole in Antarctica, an entrance they supposedly discovered during earlier expeditions.
Wow. Okay, so building on that, given Hitler's unwavering beliefs, the fanaticism of his followers, plan B like this doesn't seem entirely illogical from their perspective, right?
It's a logical extension of their ideology, as the sources put it.
Yeah, and the sources go into some intriguing detail here. They describe an alleged civilization of cultist Nazis, living, organizing within this hollow Earth.
Continuing the legacies of the Thule and Vril societies, those mystical groups.
Exactly, obsessed with Aryan origins, hidden knowledge, ancient tech, all that stuff.
And what's even more, astonishing, according to these accounts, is what the Allies supposedly found after the war. Or rather, what they couldn't find.
Oh, what missing?
Over 2,000 German and Italian scientists, almost 1 million people, the sources claim, and a fleet of 100 U-boats.
100.
Yeah, described as highly advanced, undetectable spy ships, all just vanished. to Antarctica, the sources say.
1 million people and 100 advanced U-boats. That's presented as quite a population base for a fledgling colony.
And a potential foundation for what the sources call a Fourth Reich.
The sheer scale of that claim, missing personnel, advanced transport, it's chilling, definitely. Makes for a compelling narrative, even if it's hard to prove.
And what's intriguing is that the story doesn't stop with just an escape. The sources then detail a pretty significant military response from the Allies.
Ah, Operation High Jump.
Exactly. They point to this documented operation in 1947. Admiral Richard E. Byrd leading an invasion, that's the word used, invasion of Antarctica.
4,000 troops, U.S., Britain, Australia.
And apparently at least one follow-up expedition, too. The source material states this as a fact.
And it wasn't a small scientific trip, was it?
Not at all. 3 naval battle groups, Byrd's command ship, a large fleet of warships, aircraft, machines. Clearly tools for war, not exploration.
The scale just screams conflict, doesn't it? What were they expecting?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah, unpacking this further, the sheer scale of High Jump really stands out. Like you said, massive military deployment, clearly intended for war.
But the sources say there's a part of the story that's seldom told.
The resistance part.
Yeah, that Byrd and his forces allegedly encountered heavy resistance from flying saucers.
Flying saucers, and they had to call off the invasion much earlier than planned.
That's the claim. Forced to retreat.
And this was supposedly corroborated by someone who was there.
Apparently, yes. A retired rear admiral, unnamed in this source, but someone who participated, claimed he was shocked reading about it later in a documentary, confirming a lot of aircraft and rocket shoot-downs he'd personally witnessed.
Flying saucers, that's quite a claim from a military source, even an alleged one.
It is staggering. Heavy resistance from flying saucers. So if it wasn't a conventional military they were fighting, what was it? What was the nature of this adversary, according to the sources?
Well, a key insight here, or maybe a key mystery, is the disappearance of major naval assets from High Jump.
Right. You mentioned missing ships earlier.
Yes. The sources specifically detail the USS Pine Island. Huge ship, over 640 feet long, 15,000 tons, reportedly just removed from Navy records. Final disposition unknown.
Vanished from the books.
Seems like it. And it's not the only vessel involved in Antarctic research or exploration said to have vanished over the years.
So disappearances and actual battles.
The accounts describe major battles. UFOs emerging from the Earth, even out of the water in the Arctic regions too, apparently.
Okay, and the weaponry.
This is where it gets really sci-fi. The UFOs, the sources claim, had alien weaponry, energy beams, beams that cut right through ships and planes.
Cut through steel.
That's the description. A technology the sources state that the armies of the world had never experienced before. It quickly overpowered the invasion forces.
Leading to an incredibly unexpected outcome. Wow.
Yeah, the implications. I mean, mysterious vanishing ships, descriptions of energy weapons. It suggests an adversary, unlike any conventional force we knew of then, or perhaps even now.
So the mission ends way early, Byrd returns. Yeah. And his public statements were, well, striking, weren't they?
Extremely. Your sources reference that March 5th, 1947 El Mercurio newspaper article from Chile.
Quoting Byrd directly, saying it was imperative for the United States to initiate immediate defense measures against hostile regions. Hostile regions, plural.
And the really chilling part, his warning, he apparently said he didn't want to frighten anyone unduly, but
it was a bitter reality that in case of a new war, the continental United States would be attacked by flying objects which could fly from pole to pole at incredible speeds.
Pole to pole at incredible speeds. And he apparently repeated this, citing personal knowledge from both poles, north and south.
So what happens to him after saying all this?
Well, the story goes he was hospitalized upon returning to the U.S. and essentially silenced, not allowed to hold any more press conferences.
Why?
The sources suggest he said too much. He was apparently involved in other expeditions later, but the narrative is he was kept quiet by government powers for years.
Until his death, shortly after his final expedition.
Right, and the sources explicitly mention the suggestion, the theory, that he was murdered.
Murdered. For leaking info about UFOs and supernatural encounters.
That's the claim presented in the material. Murdered for revealing too much about these paranormal or extraterrestrial encounters. Proof is elusive, of course. But the timing, the silencing, it fuels the suspicion in these accounts.
And he wasn't the only one, was he? There's a pattern suggested.
Exactly. Another intriguing detail from the sources is this consistent narrative around silencing key figures. James Forrestal,
Secretary of the Navy, then the first Secretary of Defense.
Right. He also reportedly talked openly about high jump, about Roswell too, and what happened to him. Similarly hospitalized, Bethesda Naval Hospital.
Psychiatric ward, wasn't it?
Yes. Allegedly prevented from seeing or talking to anyone. Then he dies mysteriously, fell, jumped, or was thrown from a window. Official ruling. Suicide.
But the sources question that.
Heavily. They emphasize that many researchers believe both Byrd and Forstall were murdered to silence them, because they both apparently had this strong drive to share what they knew, what they'd encountered.
This pattern, mysterious deaths surrounding classified, potentially extraterrestrial or advanced tech info. It's a powerful recurring theme in these narratives, isn't it?
It really is. It lends weight within the context of these sources to the idea of deliberate cover-up.
Okay, so given these astonishing claims, especially the advanced tech, the flying objects, it leads to the obvious question: who owned them? Who flew them?
If not Russia, if not the U.S. or Britain.
Right. Germany was defeated. Russia was just getting started with rockets, mostly using captured German tech. So people were genuinely baffled by Byrd's warnings back then.
Understandably so.
So the sources point to these rumors. Rumors that German military personnel, scientists, they fled to Antarctica after the war, set up a base.
To develop advanced aircraft based on extraterrestrial technologies.
And this wasn't even a new theory back in Byrd's time, apparently. The material asserts that many intelligent individuals were connecting the dots. They sensed something was going on, despite official denials.
And there's a specific incident mentioned, isn't there, from before the war?
Yeah, the Bavarian flying disc incident, 1938. A UFO, allegedly crewed by a distinctly human and an Aryan-appearing race, makes a forced landing in the Bavarian Alps.
And the Nazis recovered it.
Supposedly, yielding a functioning or almost functioning repairable power plant, which was, a big deal to the Third Reich.
Because it aligned with the goals of the Thule and Vrul societies, perfecting an alien power source.
Exactly. And this, the sources claim, directly connects to the vast array of experimental aircraft of extremely unique design that came out of German design bureaus between 39 and 45.
Like the Sanger Flying Wing.
Yeah, which the source identifies as the ancestor of today's B-2 bomber. It suggested these UFO recoveries were the initial impetus for all the anti-gravity research we see hints of today. Boeing, Lockheed, places like that.
It's a huge claim linking Nazi Germany, UFOs, and modern aerospace.
It is.
And digging deeper into this connection, the sources are just filled with reports supporting it, aren't they? UFO sightings with swastikas, iron crosses.
Aliens speaking German or with German or Nordic accents.
Alleged abductees taken to underground bases with swastika emblems. Even really strange claims, like from Alex Christopher, about reptiloids and Nazis working together.
Goodness. What else?
Well, there's Reinhold Schmidt reportedly claiming he was taken on a flying saucer by a German-speaking crew to the polar region. Chilean newspapers in '59 supposedly reporting German soldier crews and UFOs.
It's persistent, this theme.
Very. And there's a particularly creepy alleged fact from the source material that one human-like pilot from that Bavarian UFO crash allegedly joined the Nazis, went with the scientists to the Antarctic base.
An actual extraterrestrial pilot.
Believed to be their most precious resource, according to the source. A human, maybe, but from another planet or dimension.
Wow, that's quite something.
And even just as a historical footnote, the Rosenbergs, Julius and Ethel, during their atomic espionage trials, they had access to top-secret info. They cryptically mention warships of space. Just adds another layer to this whole mystery, doesn't it?
Right.
Raises questions about who really had the tech advantage back then.
Okay, now this entire conversation, it might leave you thinking about extraterrestrial life in the usual sense, right? Beings from Mars or Alpha Centauri or wherever.
Well, green men, yeah.
But your sources offer a very specific and actually quite profound distinction on this.
Yes, and this is a key insight from the sources, I think. Their emphasis is that we are not necessarily dealing with other worlds in the traditional astronomical sense, but rather with extradimensionalism or interdimensionalism and spiritual realms. That's the terminology used.
Interdimensionalism, not extraterrestrialism.
Exactly. It's presented in the source material as an important concept for trying to comprehend phenomena of a supernatural or paranormal nature.
Okay.
This perspective, the sources argue, maybe makes these concepts a little easier to try to fathom at least. It suggests these aren't beings traveling light years, but perhaps entities from different dimensions or spiritual planes that can interact with our reality.
Huh. So it shifts the whole framework.
It does. And the sources then frame this very specifically, speaking of collusion between interdimensional entities, often described as fallen angels or demons.
Fallen angels.
Demons!
Yes, collusion between them and men who seek power. They cast these events as part of a larger Satan's plan, the beast system, warning against a lack of knowledge about these demonic practices.
So it moves from captured Nazi tech and secret bases to something metaphysical, spiritual warfare.
That's the direction these particular sources take it, yes. It shifts the narrative dramatically from just a physical conflict to something far deeper and, frankly, more unsettling.
Wow. Okay. You've shared sources that really have taken us on a wild journey. I mean, from a hidden ice-free past for Antarctica
Right.
to alleged secret Nazi civilizations in the Hollow Earth, advanced, possibly alien or interdimensional tech, and this persistent theme of silencing and suppression of information. It's a narrative that really challenges the official story at almost every single turn. Absolutely. And connecting these threads, looking at the bigger picture, it's clear that regardless of how you, the listener, interpret these claims, whether you accept them, reject them, or just find them fascinating,
Yeah.
the sheer volume of these persistent alternative narratives, the consistent themes running through them, it really does demand a certain level of, let's say, intellectual curiosity and critical examination.
You can't just dismiss it out of hand when it keeps popping up in different forms.
Exactly. These stories, whether seen as fact or as compelling theories, they undeniably shape a significant part of public perception and certainly historical discourse, especially in alternative circles.
So here's a final thought, maybe for you to mull over, building on all this.
Yeah.
Given these persistent reports of advanced technology, whether it's recovered Nazi tech, alien, interdimensional, whatever, and considering the alleged lengths taken to silence witnesses like Byrd and Forstall, how might the true capabilities and origins of these flying objects continue to shape global power dynamics, classified research, military strategy today, right now, far beyond the public eye?
That is the lingering question, isn't it? What's still hidden?
Something to definitely think about as you process this deep dive. Thank you so much for inviting us to explore all this with you.